Hey listeners, Mallory Wilsey here, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network. I get the privilege of working alongside all of the creators at Enrollify, but I wanted to take just a quick moment to tell you about why I love the application, the podcast hosted by Allison Tercio, AVP for Enrollment and Marketing at Siena College. The application is your playbook for the ever-evolving world of higher ed enrollment marketing. This podcast zeroes in on the niche, often unexplored areas of the field, delivering a potent mix of actionable insights, practical strategies, and cutting-edge perspectives. Some of my favorite episodes are on topics like activating your school's student influencers, mastering the student inquiry moment, and even a roadmap to web accessibility. Allison cuts to the chase and keeps you entertained in these short 30-minute episodes that drop every other Tuesday. You can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search the application wherever you get your podcasts.
This is the episode that you have been asking for. We are going to hear from an institution about their employer branding campaign, University of Massachusetts Amherst. So we're going to hear, first of all, how they crafted their employer value proposition. Also, we're going to learn what they have learned about their current and prospective employees. And we're also going to get their thoughts for institutions that are looking to take on an employer brand campaign. Now, it's a young campaign, but since they have started, UMass has found that they've been able to re-engage applicants who had previously withdrawn their applications. They've also improved click-through rates from job seekers, and they've seen increases in viewership in their employer branding videos. Our guests, Hank Pinkowski, Director of Human Resources, Marketing, and Communications, focusing on talent attraction and retention. Also, Matt Nesler. He's an Executive Account Director from Ologie. They worked with UMass on their campaign. Oh, and by the way, don't forget to like and subscribe to I Want to Work There. Here's that conversation. Welcome to I Want to Work There, a podcast that helps colleges and universities boost their brands as employers of choice. I'm your host, Eddie Francis, brand strategy consultant for Edify Ventures. Join me every other week for discussions with some of the best minds in talent recruitment and retention, human resources, and marketing and communications inside and outside of higher education. I Want to Work There is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals just like you grow, and explore our other shows at enrollify.org, or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Thank you for joining me on this episode of I Want to Work There. I'm Eddie Francis. Joining me on this episode are Hank Pinkowski. He's the Director of HR, Marketing, and Communications at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Also, Matt Nesler. He's the Executive Account Director at Ologie. Fellas, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
Very good, Eddie. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks for having us, Eddie.
This is the interview I've been waiting for. All this time, I have been bending people's ears about employer branding and higher ed, and my friends at Ologie come to the rescue and say, hey, you know what? We have an institution for you to talk to. And so UMass has, you've done it. You have decided that you were going to jump into the employer branding pool. It's a young campaign, from what I understand, but we definitely want to get an idea of what was behind this. So Hank, I'm going to start with you. What were some of the challenges that led to UMass wanting to even build an employer brand in the first place?
Our call to action was pretty simple. We wanted to increase the quality of applications, and we wanted to position the university as a top employer in higher education, and specifically within the region of the Pioneer Valley of Massachusetts. And when we started the project, there were approximately, if not over, 260 open positions. That was more than double, maybe even triple what we were seeing before COVID, right? In addition to that, unemployment in Massachusetts was at a historic low at the time at 2.5%, I believe, which was at least a full point lower than the national average. And we're in a highly saturated market, right? Not helping things were a lack of general awareness. We've always had very successful ability to market to prospective students. We're the flagship campus in Massachusetts, but we never had a campaign directed to potential employees. And people just weren't considering us because they simply didn't know that we were hiring, right?
The big thing that really rang true to us as a part of our discovery process is that during COVID, there was a furlough opportunity, and so a lot of the previous former employees of UMass took that furlough opportunity. But as things started to open back up, not everything could be hybrid or could be fully remote. And so one of those big challenges was, how do we not only fill those 260 positions, but how do we do so in a flexible enough nature to allow for the positions that needed to be 100% on campus,
Right.
part-time on campus, or fully remote. So not only were there an awful lot of positions to fill, but there were variances that we needed to account for in our effort.
Hank, was there any feedback or any chatter that was happening in HR or around the campus about the quality of applications or where the applications were coming from? Was there anything that UMass noticed that added to wanting to do an employer branding campaign?
I can't say that specifically that we weren't getting the types of high quality applications. It was just a real lack of it just sort of bottomed out, right? We just
Mm-hmm.
weren't getting the numbers that we normally were getting. I think there was always a good mix of very qualified candidates and some maybe lesser qualified that we could easily work through, but we just weren't seeing those numbers like we did before COVID.
And the other thing I'm wondering, Hank, is that when the idea or the notion of doing an employer branding campaign came up, internally, was there a big question mark that hovered over the campus, or did people immediately say, wait a minute, this is a great idea? What was the immediate reaction?
I think the immediate reaction was, this is something new. I'm relatively new to higher ed myself. I did many years in the nonprofit sector and many years in the for-profit sector. This is my first stint in higher ed, and I'm seeing it's a good mix of both of those things. But one thing that really rings true, if you want to start a new project, you really have to prove that it's going to be worth it, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's what the folks who worked on getting this approved with the chancellor and with the head of human resources did. They really put strong case together, saying that this is something we've never done and this is something we need to do. We were focusing on some of the things that just didn't necessarily matter to the potential employees. We were really focusing on the fact that we're a land grant institution, which is an amazing thing, but it's not the first thing that people think of when they're applying for a job. One of the other great things that we have as a state institution is amazing benefits like a pension plan, but younger employees don't know what that is, and we weren't explaining it properly. We were really focusing on things like this that didn't necessarily ring true to those potential employees that we wanted to hire and bring in, and they just weren't coming in the door.
And Matt, you had a thought that you were about to share.
Yeah, I think that, you went back to, was there caution? Was there optimism? I would almost call it cautious optimism when,
Yeah.
I first had my first kickoff call with the folks over at UMass. And I think, the vice chancellor for HR said it best. It's like, we're hiring for a city. We need everything from the person that
Hmm.
helps in the nuclear reactor to the person that sweeps the floors and anything and everything in between. And with the amount of open positions, it wasn't a matter of whether or not they were going to be all in on this employee brand, but they needed to be all in and it needed to succeed. And so, to Hank's point, it wasn't necessarily about they were getting the wrong applicants prior. They just needed more volume to help fill all of those different vacancies throughout all facets of the institution.
And so, Matt, let me stick with you. What were some of the findings that led to crafting that employer value proposition that you wound up coming up with?
So Hank talked about it a little bit in the upfront and all about increasing quality applications. So that was kind of our North Star. So what can we do to increase those quality applications? But in every discovery process that I've been a part of at Ologie, we try to turn every stone over in the process. We both qual and quant in the process to get an understanding of internal sentiment and external sentiment when looking for their next opportunity. And the three things that really rose to the top or bubbled up to the top consistently, both in our quant findings and our qual findings. One was a lack of transportation. The second was high cost of living in the Pioneer Valley. And then the third, which was a very big one and one that we weren't sure that we could necessarily impact, but current employee sentiment. So I talked
Mm-hmm.
earlier about those furloughs. And so some of these interviews we sat in on, people were doing the job of 3 and 4 individuals in the
Yeah.
current state that prior to the pandemic, and everybody feels that, right? It's not unique to UMass. But in speaking to some of these individuals in our discovery process, they picked up 2 and 3 jobs on top of the job they were already doing just to keep the office open, to keep the
Mm-hmm.
lights turned on. So the students, back to that land grant mission, so the students could have that atmosphere. But when you think about bringing in some new employees, that current employee sentiment can persuade someone to go further or dissuade them to go to the next opportunity. And so we realized early that our employer brand couldn't necessarily change the current employee sentiment, but it could do something to elevate, to rally those current employees, knowing that we're going to invest in this employer brand. We're going to invest in increasing those quality apps to ultimately alleviate some of those stressors in your 9 to 5, to make your life a little bit easier, to bring in those new employees to fill some of those gaps. The lack of transportation was a big one. Pioneer Valley, if you've never been, it's gorgeous, but it's isolated. It is that picturesque college town, right? It's beautiful. But public transportation, the bus route could be hours, if not longer, to get into Amherst from Springfield. There wasn't a direct line to bring people in. So you're looking at carpooling or adding even more time onto your day because of that lack of transportation. What we found from lack of transportation in our qualitative interviews, though, was that people would find their communities in these jobs. And so there was a really good community
Mm-hmm.
feel. And so you had the opportunity for carpooling. We witnessed that most in a dining hall tour, where we could see groups of people coming together that were current employees, and they would ride together. They would bring in family members, friends to fill open positions. And so that lack of transportation, while negative, we could spin that into a positive for increased applications. And then high cost of living, the same. The lack of transportation and high cost go hand in hand, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Amherst isn't the cheapest place to live, and so the job you're applying for, you're probably going to have that commute. And so you have to think about both, where you might not live directly in Amherst, so you have to figure out what that transportation modality is to get you to your new job.
The thing that strikes me in listening to this is from the very beginning when I was a recruiter and I started to deal with employer branding with clients, the response whenever I would talk to a hiring manager or whenever I would talk to whoever I was working with and saying, "Hey, listen, this place really needs a brand. They need to really define their brand and they need to know how to articulate the value of being here." Inevitably, the response would be, "Well, there's some people who hate it here, right?" and, and and I'm sitting there going, well, first of all, we don't necessarily want to uplift their voices, but at the same time, we don't want to ignore them.
Mhm.
But I would always find myself explaining to people, but no place is perfect. Of course, there are going to be people who hate where they work. I mean, that's just life. And so, Matt, in thinking about that, how did you navigate that part of the conversation? And you too, Hank, but how did you navigate that part of the conversation with people who said, well, yeah, UMass is not exactly Disneyland over here. But I mean, how do you navigate that part of the conversation?
I want to jump in there before Matt, because they did such a great job on this for us. And the whole research time of the campaign, everything that happened before, what I call the fun stuff, which is, the brand and the marketing aspect of it. But the research that Ologie did was outstanding. I think they were on at least two, if not more, campus visits. And we had a number of both remote and in-person interviews.
Yeah.
And to your point, Eddie, we wanted to emphasize the positive, but we knew going in that there is probably going to be some negative voice here, and I'll let Matt talk to how they navigated that aspect of it.
You were fantastic in framing up those interviews for us. One of the biggest
So thank you.
things, whether it's employer brand or higher ed brand, being prepped for those discovery sessions is mission critical. And those sessions can
Mhm.
really be therapy sessions for some
Yeah.
individuals, right? Where you kind of have to grin and bear it, let them talk through why they dislike it, but then also kind of lean in and like, but what keeps you here?
Yeah.
What's the value
Mhm.
of staying here, right? It might be hard now, but tell me what keeps you here. Why would someone join you, or why would you want someone to join you? And so we thought about things that what story can we tell? What things can we lean in on? I think the thing that I always come back to when I talk about this discovery process, we met a chef that was in a dining hall working, and he was working for his side hustle. He was trying to spin up his own food truck. So he was in the dining hall working, but doing it for his family, doing it for the health insurance, doing it for the stability and the security, but allowing him to build that nest egg to go start his own food truck. So he knew that Amherst was a great spot of opportunity for him. Whereas that's something that you might not see or you might not envision. And so thinking about what does a higher ed institution provide to you? It's ongoing education. It's increased access. For Amherst, it's a beautiful setting to do it in. And so, how can you lean in to the educational aspect of it, the access aspect of it, and then that sense of place? And I think we really found that rang true. It's really what kept people there. There was a lot of access and a lot of opportunity at UMass Amherst. And so, there's going to be naysayers, and so you want to hear them out. And it really helps to hear them out. So when our campaign went live, they're like, my voice was heard. And so they had an opportunity to share an opinion and agree or disagree with it. Their voice was heard. And that was mission critical to launching the campaign. But really kind of leaning in on like, what does Amherst provide to give these folks opportunity to not only help Amherst, but help themselves?
Hey, it's Mallory, Chief Strategist of Enrollify. Why travel far when an exceptional higher ed conference experience awaits from the comfort of your campus or home office? I'm thrilled to announce that every single session at the 2024 Engage Summit will be live streamed. And the best part? Registration is free. Many of your favorite Enrollify creators are presenting. Maya Demishkovich and Jenny Lee Fowler will teach you how to craft an AI-powered social media influencer strategy. Jamie Hunt will help you unlock the AI revolution in your team. And Shane Baglini and Allison Tercio are teaming up to boost your productivity with generative AI. Plan out your dream conference by scoping out the agenda and taking note of the sessions you want to tune in for. Visit engage.element451.com and register yourself and your team for free today. Now, back to the show.
You're listening to I Want to Work There. I'm Eddie Francis, and we are talking to Hank Pinkowski. He is from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, Director of HR Marketing and Communications. Also, Matt Nesler from Ologie. He's an Executive Account Director. And, one of the things I'm adamant about whenever I talk to folks about employer branding is that how employees leave is just as important as how you get them there and how you keep them there. Because I think this chef example is such a fantastic example of someone who he's going to get his food truck, right? and that is going to happen for him. But he walks away from UMass saying, UMass gave me a place, they gave me an opportunity. If you want to apply, you need to apply because they did such a great thing for me. And one of the things that I find, and Hank, this is leading into a question I'm going to ask you, but one of the things that I find is that if you can get some positive chatter from the community outside the institution, then, that really, really helps the effort. So with that being said, and with that in mind, Hank, there have been the internal reactions as far as this is concerned. And I would love to hear about the internal reactions so far to the campaign. I know it's still a young campaign. But also, is there anything that you have noticed about external reactions? So let's go with internal first. What are some of the takeaways from the internal reactions for you, Hank?
Yeah, so far internal reaction has been fantastic. Employees are emailing me asking for links to share their TV spots, or I'll get a call and they mentioned that they heard the radio spot on their drive into work, and how can I share that, or how can I send that to someone else? People, I think, seem to want to be a part of the campaign. The employees featured in the campaign tell me that they feel like celebrities on campus sometimes. Whereas it was first, a little difficult to talk people into, hey, you might see yourself on television or in a digital ad somewhere representing the university. Now it's a little bit easier to recruit those folks. People are pretty happy about it. So I'm still meeting new people. Obviously, big campus, but when I meet people in a meeting, like, oh, the campaign, and so it's really on top of people's minds internally.
I mean, we spun up a multi-day photo shoot between the Thanksgiving holiday break, finals, and a winter shutdown. And so we knew that for this to be authentic and successful to launch in January, everything had to feature current and good standing UMass Amherst employees. And so Hank did an impeccable job of grabbing, how many was it, 5 to 7 folks across
I think we
different
had
areas?
we think we had about five. Yeah, about five, I believe. Yeah.
So five folks that represented, 5 different disciplines at Amherst spun up a photo shoot over 2 days. And it's a way not only for the campaign to be authentic, but to really rally around that internal sentiment. To Hake's point, having no issues finding volunteers for a photo shoot, to be put in a regional TV spot, to be put in a digital ad, to be put in a billboard placement. It's so fantastic to hear that that's going to keep up.
Hank, I want you to finish this sentence for me. An employee, a faculty, a staff member comes to you or they send an email and it starts with, I had no idea that. What are some of the ways you've heard that sentence completed since you started the employer branding campaign?
I would say I had no idea we had so many benefits. I
Yeah.
think one of the things that we heard that benefits obviously for not just for potential employees at UMass but everywhere. What are those benefits to help my work life balance, to help my life, my family? It's all part of the campaign and an extension of the campaign that we're doing internally using the same look and feel and same branding. But we have a monthly newsletter that I started. Some of those benefits that people just didn't know about. Through the library, every employee gets a free subscription to the New York Times. People didn't know that.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, isn't that cool? I didn't know that. That's fantastic. There's a movie service on campus. That's an app that you can put on your Apple TV or your phone or however, that has not just educational movies, but all different types of movies that you can watch for free. And these are things that folks, there was buried somewhere on the website. We just weren't promoting that to the staff. So using that theme of it's beneficial and we're here for good. We're going to tell you about these things.
And so Hank, let me use this as your official welcome to higher education because because I think in marketing and communications and higher education, if you don't hear any other term or any other phrase, one phrase that you hear every time there's a brand refresh or something like that is something is buried somewhere in the website. Every single time
Oh,
it
that's funny.
comes up. So this is your official welcome to higher ed marketing and communications.
Thank you. I do appreciate that.
And one other thing, I was wondering is, the folks in HR, I mean, has there been an indication that folks are feeling better about the flow of applications at this point?
We think so, yeah. As we've been saying, it is a little early in the campaign. I had a meeting with those folks just last week to discuss some of those numbers and how those applications are coming in. And whereas it's a brand campaign. We say our job is at top of that funnel, right? We can bring people to this webpage and we can bring people to that careers page. But after that, it's up to you guys to sell that position and hire the folks. By all early indications, is they're seeing some good quality applications, and they're excited to see how many of them are coming in.
Yeah, and this is understanding that higher ed is it's a slow moving process. So I mean, even ramping up to getting more applications, it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, it's going to get there, but it has to kind of get there in the way that it does. Yeah.
To build on that, so one of the things Hank mentioned that our campaign, we spent one session just drilling in on goals, objectives, and KPIs for the campaign itself. And to Hank's point, we were like, we can agree that we can lead the horse to water, but once the horse is at the water, we have to lean on technology that's in place to get those applicants through. But something that we deployed as a part of our campaign is we're leveraging first party data to see where our applicants are in the system. And so you might apply for a job and we know that job has a long lead time to get through a background check, a couple of interviews before you can extend an offer. And so we've got first party data we're leveraging as a part of this campaign to keep those prospective employees engaged with UMass Amherst, to let them know to not go on to the next opportunity, to stay engaged, to stay, to read about the different benefits, to see what else is out there, to keep them excited, keep them engaged, because higher ed is a machine. Things do take time. And so we're trying to build those quality applicants, but also keep them engaged while they're going throughout that process together.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, and keeping in mind this is a state institution as well, so things move how they move with state institutions. I love to ask my guests about the way forward when it comes to colleges and universities establishing or boosting their employer brands. I want to ask both of you kind of a different question, though. And Matt, I'll start with you. What advice would you give an institution they want to position themselves as an employer of choice, but they lack the resources? What is a first step that you would advise that they take to get in to walk into that direction?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, Eddie. I think the thing that gave me the most insight as a part of this process was in our discovery phase. And it was our peer and competitor audit. We only looked at one institution of higher education as a part of our peer and competitor analysis. We went to tech, we went to retail, we went to food and bev, we looked to hospitality. We looked broadly across multiple industries to see
Mhm.
how others were doing it. How were they positioning themselves? Because if we're up against Target, or we're up against the movie theater, or we're up against big tech, we have to ensure that our message rang true to those varying audiences, because everything was so different. So our peer and competitor analysis went so broad and deep. Whereas a higher ed brand, you might look at, 3 current cross apps and 3 aspirant peers. We had to go completely out of the higher ed industry, nearly
Mhm.
90% out of it, to really see how we could differentiate UMass when it came to employer branding. And I think for any institution that wants to get into this, that's the perfect first step to see what's happening in your own backyard.
I appreciate that that kind of analysis was done because I have heard from myself, colleagues at other institutions who have said, I really love being here. I have a lot of fun here. I have a great community here, but I can make more money doing fast food. So should I leave this dream of mine of being a professor one day or of being a president one day and go somewhere else, or do I stick with it? And so I think that analysis of what's happening outside of higher ed is something that higher ed itself very broadly needs. Like they higher ed needs to get very serious about figuring out who can siphon talent away, and I think a lot of administrations would be very surprised to find out potentially where some of their quality employees either are going to leave and go, or where they're not even going to get, whether they're not even going to see the application for that quality employee, unfortunately, because word of mouth is very powerful. Someone gets on Facebook and says, yeah, I make more money as a server, then
Yeah.
that is really something to contend with. So salute for doing that analysis outside of higher ed to take a look at what the employer branding practices are. Hank, for you, I mean, sitting right there on campus in the middle of it all, what is something that you would advise a campus take a look at doing, especially if they are
Yeah.
a campus that's kind of strapped for resources?
First on my list, yeah, utilize your internal resources. We have an amazing creative department. We were able to utilize our internal art direction and photography departments for the campaign with immaculate guidance from Ologie, who provided us a brand book to go on for that photo shoot. We were able to do that and save a lot of money by utilizing our internal resources there. As I mentioned, bringing in for the internal communication side of things, a monthly newsletter, things along those lines, where you can talk about the campaign, just integrate that campaign internally. You get those internal resources, becoming brand advocates. The more they see that brand. Also, organic social media. We're doing that in conjunction with the campaign. Currently, following the campaign style guide that Ologie made for us, I'm able to post on LinkedIn using the same types of messages that we know
Mhm.
work because of our reporting. I take what's working, I incorporate that into our LinkedIn posts, things like that, and we're really seeing some good results there.
I'm curious about something else here. Does this give UMass's marketing another dimension?
I think so. As with any larger university, I think we have a number of campaigns, a number of brand campaigns that are concurrently going on, and with a number of different agencies working with those different brands. Ologie worked very closely with us to be sure that this campaign would fit with our other campaigns. Our Bobby Revolutionary campaign. This is a companion piece to that. It's a different message, but it hits all the same points. Speaking to a student, speaking to to an employee, are they different audiences? Absolutely, but are they really that different? Not so much. They're still people, right? And they're wanting, they are investigating us just as much as we're wanting them to join us, and speaking the same language across those different campaigns was important to us, and I think we hit it.
Mm. And Matt, I'm gonna actually end with one more question with you.
Yeah.
What was your takeaway as someone from the agency that really worked with UMass? What was the takeaway for you?
For me, this was, to Hank's point earlier, this was just a different way to flex my brain versus an
Hmm.
enrollment campaign. It's an awareness and reputation campaign ultimately to attract employers. And I think what I learned is that a lot of people don't see higher ed as a place to go work. And so it was the amount of people, not only internally from our qual, but from the quantitative survey that we did. It was just, how do we break down that barrier and show that a institution of higher education is a fantastic place to go work. And so that was one of the big ones, is just the awareness that higher ed institutions haven't really had to put themselves out there in an employer brand campaign before, right? There haven't been those issues.
Hmm.
And so just, how do you flex but fitting within a system to break down that barrier and show that this is a fantastic place for you, not only to come in right outside of graduation, but if you're looking to switch to a whole new career path or just grow in yourself professionally, it was a fantastic place to be.
Matt Nesler, he's the executive account director at Ologie, worked with University of Massachusetts Amherst, and Hank Pinkowski is the director of HR, marketing, and communications. Fellas, thank you so much for joining me on I Want to Work There.
Annie, thank you so much. This was fantastic. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
I Want to Work There is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Mallory Wilsey, Seth Odell, Dave Kibbles, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.